Good morning. Welcome to our PPP Forgiveness webinar. We will begin in just a minute. Well, I apologize for that. So also, as you're looking to the chat, please make sure if you have any questions that need to be addressed this morning that we haven't covered, type your questions in the chat and we will make sure that they are answered. If they're not answered during the presentation, we will come back for the Q&A at the end to make sure we address them. And if at that point there's something that we don't know, we will put it on our blog in a way of information afterwards, and we will send it out to you for next steps. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our Small Business Administration. They've been our partners, our strong partners for the past just about 8 months. Kim Stout and Shannon DiGaglio. I'm sorry, Shannon, if I pronounced your last name wrong. But Kim and Shannon are here with us this morning to talk about PPP forgiveness from the SBA angle. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I need to have the ability to share my screen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have powder on my face. Hold on.
All right, it looks like I got the ability here. Trish, just give me a second here.
Yep, take your time, Kim. Thank you so much. Sorry. So as we get set here, we will make sure that we remind anybody that's just tuning in, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will make sure that they're answered.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Again, my name is Kim Stout. I'm here with the U.S. Small Business Administration, and Shannon DiGaglio is also with us today to help answer some questions. The district office is located in King of Prussia. However, we cover the 40 eastern counties of Pennsylvania for our particular district office. I'm the point of contact for Delaware County, so if you have additional questions after today, feel free to reach out to me. And then, of course, Shannon, if I'm unavailable. Typically, the Small Business Administration is in place to help businesses start, grow, and expand. We have been almost 99% in disaster recovery mode since mid-March. So we're here to update information that we have today. Again, I will warn you, this information is what we have today. That doesn't mean that this information will stay current moving forward, just because we do know that Congress and the House is working on additional programming for both the Paycheck Protection Program and disaster assistance. So this is current information that we have right now. Please feel free to continue to reach out to our resource partners. SCORE is on the call today. They have been a huge partner in assisting us in all of the small businesses within Delaware County, as well as our district, to help make sure that you get the information out about the recovery programs, as well as assistance that can help you continue to grow your business, start your business, but of course pivot in this important time. I'm not going to go into detail about them because we do have SCORE on the call that will be following up after I'm finished here today. With our small businesses, what is still available to you during this recovery period? At this point in time, the economic injury disaster loan, this was put in place in mid-March once a federal disaster was declared. This loan program is still available to small businesses today. It is, I'll give you the website here in a few minutes, but if you have not applied already and you feel that you need to, go ahead and do so. There is money still available for the program, and it is for almost all small businesses, as well as nonprofits, churches, houses of worships, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and rental properties. This is a loan. It is something that you will pay back over time. For nonprofits, the interest rate is 2.75%. For for-profits, it's 3.75%, and the terms are 30 years. You're going to be asked to have collateral if you are awarded money over $25,000. They'll put a blanket UCC on your business assets. However, if you acquire loan funds of $25,000 or less, you will not need collateral for this particular program. There are some ineligible entities, but for the most part, they've been, besides the list here, they've been opening it up to the majority of the businesses, which has not happened in prior circumstances. The SBA is typically offers the disaster assistance to small businesses because of physical disasters. So this is the first time we've covered it for a pandemic. If you are interested in applying, the information is at that first bullet point, the COVID-19 relief.sba.gov/#/ that is the short application that you have to complete. Please make sure that you do put in accurate information. What we've found with the Office of Disaster Assistance over the last 6 months is that most, I would say most applications got held up because of inaccurate information, people rushing, giving wrong bank information, etc. So please be careful if you're filling out this application. The customer service number is listed there, the 800 number. If you need to contact the Office of Disaster Assistance, please feel free to reach out to them directly. We try our best at the district level, but we do not have access to their system, so we can't check on statuses of your application. You can try to contact us, but we do not have that information directly. If you are submitting a reconsideration because you have applied for the economic injury disaster loan and was denied for whatever the reasoning is on the letter that you receive, please follow the instructions closely on that reconsideration letter and resubmit it. If you need a status of your reconsideration, you also have to contact the customer service at that 800 number. We don't have the status update on at the district level. The Paycheck Protection Program was offered and did sunset on August 8th. We are working through the forgiveness process at this point in time. This is something that I will say, you need to pay attention to, because this is the conversation that's happening at the level, at the federal level, is, how is forgiveness going to change from what we know of it as of today. Please pay attention on the SBA.gov website and the Treasury website to get the most up-to-date information. Anything new coming out, we will try to get that out on a district level if you've signed up for our emails or continue to do webinars such as this. There's a lot of information on these slides, and the chamber can feel free to send this out to anybody who's participating today. I don't want to monopolize the time, but I just want to run through things quickly. For the Paycheck Protection Program, the big change back in June was that payroll is at 40%, use 40% or more of your loan for payroll, and then for non-payroll costs, it went to 40%. When applying for forgiveness, we're kind of in this period where people are asking, should I apply? I'm telling people to prepare to apply. Our lenders are working diligently and working with our small businesses. If you have the Paycheck Protection Program, please feel free to pull up the application, prepare it, understand what's going to be needed, because there is going to be a process at some point in time that you are going to have to apply for forgiveness until we hear otherwise. The forgiveness process is simple. you submit your application and the other required documents to your lender. The lender will review it and then pass it on to the SBA. So do note that there is some time. There are some days that we are allowing our lenders to take 60 days to look through the application and of course submit it to us. So this is going to be a little bit of a process for you. These are the documents that you'll have to complete. And I know people are going to go into more detail as we go through this presentation. So again, this is just very general to get started. You know, there are easy applications out there if you've used the proceeds appropriately. We'll get more into that later. And I want to move on so that we can hear our other panelists and get the information from them because they will go into more detail for you. Updated information, if you're on Twitter, you can find us at SBA_Eastern PA. You can also go to sba.gov/PA and sign up for email updates. And as soon as information changes, or if anything does change moving forward, you have questions, you can reach out to us that way. With that, I'm going to stop sharing it, handing it over to our next panelist, and then we'll take questions as we move through the presentation.
Kim, thank you so much for all of that information. I am reading through the questions now, so we will, if they're not addressed, we'll bring them back at the end. But somebody did mention that this is going through very quickly. We do understand that we are going over a lot of information in a short period of time this morning. It will be sent out to all of the attendees on the webinar, and then we'll also have it on our website that's linked to our YouTube channel. So you can go back and reference this information at any time. So at this point, I'm going to move along to our next presenter, Anne from SCORE. Anne?
Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Anne Angelucci. I run a local payroll company, Premier Payroll Services, but I'm here as a SCORE volunteer for the Delaware and Chester County SCORE. So SCORE has been a huge resource to small business owners as you guys try to navigate this challenging time. There are mentorships available through SCORE. We've done PPP webinars as new information comes out. We recently did one in July. Nothing has changed thus far, but if any small businesses out there need help preparing their application or wondering what they may need for the forgiveness process, what documentation they should have, what utility bills, basically we're there to help you guys dot your I's and cross your T's so that you can be fully prepared to get this loan forgiven. So if anyone wants to reach out to SCORE, we're available for mentors. We'll do another presentation as soon as any new information is given. I know you guys have heard a lot about the $150,000 being the amount that's going to be automatically forgiven. That's tied up in legislation right now. So, you know, rest assured that this is a gray area still, but what we know today is your banks are starting to accept the forgiveness, and check with your bank if they're starting it, and then circle back with SCORE if you're looking for more help on any of this. Thank you.
Anne, thank you so much. And Anne will be here till the end to answer any questions. And as Anne mentioned, SCORE is help to prepare the documents, to know what you need to apply for the forgiveness, and make sure that you are prepared for that. So at this point, we're going to move over to Brinker Simpson. We have Chris McCabe and Bob Simpson here with us this morning.
All right, thank you, Trish. And thanks to everybody who's on the panel, and thanks to everybody who's joined the webinar. We haven't had a PPP update in a while. We've had many of them as part of our firms trying to help our small business clients. Most of all of them have received PPP money and are now at that crucial point of trying to get 100% forgiveness of their loan. I know that Kimberly from the SBA talked about the forgiveness process. We have recommended to our clients to hold on and wait. At this time, don't submit your applications yet. The SBA had received about 1% of forgiveness applications from the loans that were written. And as of the other day, they had not ruled on any of those. The process works. is that you have 10 months from the date that you received your loan to ask, at the end of the cover period, I'm sorry, to put your application in for forgiveness. Most of the covered periods are going to start to end in October if you're doing the 24-week period. So originally PPP was an 8-week cover period loan where 75% of your payroll and 25% of your other costs had to be spent in that 8-week period for forgiveness. And Congress came along, changed the rules, and President Trump accepted it to extend the 8-week period to a 24-week period and lower the reliance on payroll so that 60% of your PPP money must be spent on payroll costs, and the other 40% can be spent on rent, utilities, transportation costs, and interest. One thing that everybody should know is that the 60% is a minimum number, so you can spend 100% of your PPP on payroll if that's what gets you to the forgiveness spot. There are a couple of other requirements that you need to do. You have to restore your head count. You have to make sure the people that are working for you are paid at least 75% of the wage they had before the pandemic hit. So there's a couple of other measurements that will come due. I know the SBA slides describe the forgiveness process. So there are, right now, as it's written, there are 2 ways to get forgiveness. One is through the EZ program, which there are a few requirements that we have on the 1, 2, and 3 here on our screen. If you meet those 3 requirements, you can file the EZ form, 3508 EZ, which is a easier application to get in. You still have to submit your documentation to support your forgiveness. And that documentation can be somewhat voluminous. It is in the SBA forgiveness application, what documents need to be submitted. Even though you may not be ready to apply for forgiveness, you should start to get those documents together so that when you do apply, you give your bank a complete package. You want your banker to be very, very friendly to you, and you want to be friendly to him, because the banker is the one who's going to accept your package, go through it first, approve it on the bank end, then submit it to SBA. The bank has 60 days to do that after you send them your package, and SBA has 90 days after they receive that package to fund the bank. When the SBA pays the bank their money, the bank will notify you that your loan is forgiven. We're coming down towards the end of the year, so we're going to cross over some calendar year tax situations, which could get tricky. The one of the downsides to PPP as it sits right now is that the expenses that you pay with this tax-free or this forgiven money are non-deductible from an income tax standpoint. A lot of our clients are arguing with us about that, but there's nowhere to argue. We're telling them. So if you got a $100,000 PPP loan and you used it to pay payroll and rent expenses, those rent and payroll expenses are not deductible for your tax return as the rules are written right now. There is some things in Congress right now that would like to remove the taxation of those of that PPP money. It's not moving now, and we don't suspect that it will move before the election. President Trump is in support of making the entire PPP program tax-free, but we don't know what's going to happen, and likely that's not going to be argued with what's going on in Congress right now. There are 3 levels. There are 3 bills in Congress right now that will do automatic forgiveness for PPP. The first is that any loan at $150,000 and below would be automatically forgiven by the borrower signing an affidavit that he used the money in the right spots and he complied with all the directives of the PPP loan agreement. They would not have to submit any documentation to support the loan forgiveness if you're at the 150 and below. So you would only have to sign the affidavit and send it in. You would need to retain your loan forgiveness pieces in case that loan were ever questioned by either SBA or Treasury Department or the bank. There's 2 other bills that are in Congress right now. One bill moves that $150,000 to $350,000, and this third bill actually moves the $350,000 to $2 million, so that all loans $2 million and less would be automatically forgiven by a signed affidavit. We believe, as most of our banking friends believe, that the 150 will certainly be approved. So any loans under 150, we've asked our clients to hold off and don't submit your forgiveness yet. That may change next week. We're debating on what advice to give our clients now that the SBA yesterday actually said they're going to start ruling on forgiveness applications now. It's going to be a very difficult time for banks and very difficult times for the SBA. One of the things we want to point out is that you may get 100% forgiveness on your PPP loan, but if you received any of the EIDL grant money that Kimberly talked about from SBA, that grant money will not be forgiven. So that will have to be paid back as part of your PPP repayment. If you're a sole practitioner or a sole proprietor and you got the maximum amount of the loan, which is $20,833, and you had $100,000 of income last year and you have $100,000 of income this year, you will be automatically forgiven on the $20,833. And we believe that that money may not be taxable to you since it was never a tax deduction for sole proprietors. So those are important things if you're a sole proprietor or you're an LLC member. Those are important things to remember as well. You can hit our website if you have questions. We're trying to keep it up to date daily. That's www.brinkersimpsoncares.com, and we'll stay around for questions as well.
Kristen, Bob, thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll be able to slide for that. We're good. Thank you.
Okay, you know what, I just wanted to, before we move on, because there were a lot of questions, if you can just go over again, when do folks need to start to apply for forgiveness? And then also talk a little bit about how full-time employees are calculated. I think I saw a couple of questions on that. So if you could just go over that for a second.
Well, so that it's 10 months after the end of your covered period is the deadline to apply to your lender. And then once you do that, the lender has 60 days to forward that to the SBA, and then the SBA has 90 days to issue a decision. We think that the SBA will be quicker than that based on what we're hearing, but you have some time to apply. And the FTE is, you have to pick one of two periods that you'll compare against, either 2/15/19 through 6/30/19 or 1/1/20 through 2/29/20. And is it 40 hours now, or is it? I think it changed from 30 to 40.
30 to 40 hours.
And it's based on, I think it's a 40-hour employee now, but there's partials. So you're going to add up all your hours and divide it by the number of employees, and that's going to be your number. And the payroll companies, almost all of them have these reports available for you. You're going to pick the two base periods and they're going to calculate it for you. And then you're going to pick your covered period and they're going to calculate it for you. And from what I've seen, they've improved quite a bit. So definitely check with your payroll reporting. I know Paychex has it, Premier has it, Paylocity has it. You just go to the PPP section, and a lot of these reports are being issued that way. So it takes the work out of it.
And just to clarify on the application for forgiveness, so if your 24-week period ends October 2nd, you have 10 months from October 2nd to get your application in. If you spent all your money and you believe that you're for 100% forgiven, you can submit your application now, assuming that your bank is prepared to accept those applications, which not all banks locally here are ready to do that yet. I know we have some WSFS people on here, and I know that WSFS is accepting forgiveness applications. So if you're ready to go and you think you've got 100% forgiveness, you can apply now and get the process started.
Yep. And the lenders are going to want that because they're going to want the debt off their books. So you'll probably see a lot of emails from your lender, and you should apply when you can, is when the guidance is kind of final. As final as it will be.
All right, Kristen and Bob, thank you so much. I know we'll have some more questions for you at the end, but now we'll turn it over to WSFS. We'll have Candace Caruso, Zoe Combs, and Anthony Ryan from WSFS who are with us now.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so I'm Anthony Ryan with WSFS on the small business lending side. I'm the director of small business, and I cover the more traditional lending. I'll just make a couple of brief comments before handing it over to Candace and Zoe, who are the government guaranteed or SBA lending experts on our team. I think a couple of things that hopefully resonated with folks on the call was, there's a lot of detail and attention to detail required here. And, what we're seeing so far is, those customers that are working with their accountants or their financial planners or tax advisors are better prepared because it is a very complex process in some respects. And there is a lot of at stake as far as forgiveness is concerned. And the other thing is, which I believe is important, is to have a relationship with your bank in terms of now, if you don't have know who your contacts are with your local bank, whoever you bank with, this is a good time to pre-position yourself or to get to know that so that you're fully informed of the process as banks start to roll out their forgiveness applications. So Candace Caruso is a Director of Government Guaranteed Lending at WSFS, and Zoe is a Relationship Manager for our SBA group. So I'll hand over to them for an update.
Thank you, Anthony. So just to share, WSFS Bank is accepting forgiveness applications for our PPP borrowers. We launched this platform solution to help make it easy and streamline the process for our customers as much as possible. Obviously, there's quite a bit of preparation that you will need to do in order to prepare for forgiveness, as everyone has been touching on. Eligible costs, just at a very high level, will be payroll costs, and at least 60% of the total PPP forgiveness amount needs to be utilized for that purpose: business rent payments, mortgage interest payments, and utility payments. I would also share it's important to identify the covered period you intend to use and that the expenses occurred within that appropriate covered period. So that would be the 8 weeks or the 24 weeks. And essentially how the process will work, it will begin with you, the borrower, reaching out to your lender, not the SBA directly. So you will be reaching out to the lender that originated your PPP loan, find out the process that they're going to be offering and utilizing to help you navigate. There is potential legislative changes to the program. So we, like many other financial institutions, have been sharing with our borrowers that particularly if you are a loan size of $150,000 or less, that it may be advantageous to hold off on application. However, it's at the discretion of the borrower if they want to choose to hold off or not. But given that there are anticipated and negotiations going on around simplifying the process for borrowers with loans of that size, it certainly, there is not a rush per se to do so. One of the things I would also share, and everyone had reiterated, is there is that 10-month period. So you do have the 10 months. Once you get your submission in within that period as well, your payments will be deferred until forgiveness is processed. So it's important to be mindful of that deadline. And then, of course, as far as documentation, you will need proof of payment of payroll. You're going to need to also make sure you have your FTE accounts or full-time employee accounts documented. As you shared originally on the Schedule A worksheet with when you applied for the loan, you'll need to do a reconcilement there. Certainly would encourage any of the small business owners to work with, whether it be their accountant, their payroll company, or their SCORE representative to help them prepare if there are navigation issues. As a lender, we are not in a position to help you prepare the documents, but rather to validate those documents and make sure that they meet the SBA's requirements for this program as it relates to forgiveness before we submit it to them. In our case at WSFS, we are leveraging technology to streamline this, have APIs in with the SBA, which is a fancy way of saying we're able to electronically and digitally push our applications to them and get decisions. At this time, the SBA hasn't been granting decisions as of yet on any loan applications. This is not specific to any one lender. But as they begin to review these applications, there'll be different statuses that they'll provide back to us as lenders, and then we'll communicate to our borrowers. This will include whether the package is approved in full, approved in part, denied, or denied without prejudice. And then ultimately from there, that message would be delivered to you by your lender, and then your lender would go, would deliver that back to you. If forgiveness has been granted, it would be applied to your loan. And then of course, if for some reason you do not agree with that decision, you can contest the decision with the SBA as well. Because again, from a lending community standpoint, we're trying to get ahead of anything that can be corrected before we submit to the SBA. So if we do recognize anything in the package that's missing or needs further supporting documentation, at least within WSFS, we're reaching out to you. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of how the forgiveness process may look with your lender. Certainly WSFS is here to help and very committed to the small business community. We participated in the PPP program at a very high level within this area. We had over 5,600 loans and almost $1 billion deployed out to our small businesses. So certainly here to serve. And also, in addition to that, want to hand off to Zoe just to talk about how we can support your small business outside of PPP as well.
Thank you, Candace. You know, everyone has been talking about, you know, PPP forgiveness. We've been in this cycle for, you know, since March. But we are starting to see, as businesses have reopened and are trying to find new ways to operate and generate their revenues now and beyond, looking forward. Many are looking for guidance as they develop like new growth strategies and discover new ways for new cash flow resources. SBA absolutely has programs in place regardless of the pandemic to help businesses grow and also to support them through the challenge that we're in right now. I think one of the things that our advice to any businesses right now would be obviously assessing where they are at the moment, knowing where you stand. So what was the impact potentially? What was the impact that COVID and the shutdown had on your business? How were you able to recover, if you have been able to recover, or where are you? And if there were any growth or opportunities that this shutdown presented to your business as well, because we are seeing businesses who were able to pivot slightly or change, you know, who their customer base was, or utilize their existing customer base to change some of the things they were doing so that they could, you know, survive during this pandemic. And some actually had some opportunity out of it. So what we wanted to present today is just as you're moving forward, planning and preparation, if you're going to be speaking to your lenders about potential financial or cash flow needs, is going to be very important. You want to maybe outline your historical financial picture so that you know exactly where you were prior. And then most banks at this point will be needing projections as you move forward, regardless of whether they're, you know, usually we would need them for startup situations, but we will need them moving forward so that we know where your position will be over the next year or so. And we would encourage you to utilize any of your resources, including obviously CPAs, the SBDCs, the Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, for assistance in doing so. There are a lot of resources right now that came out of this, and they're there to help you. And we would encourage you to do so that you can help yourself figure out where you are and where you're going to be. We as a bank, WSFS, we're lending. I mean, we're trying to support our clients through this, and especially in our SBA group. The 7A program is designed to support small businesses and has expanded terms so that we can help you through it. And we are all actively waiting to see, obviously, what the government's going to do with some of the renewed support that they're proposing they give small business over the next couple weeks. When that does happen, there will potentially be some more support too through the SBA programs. And I would highly recommend that you contact your banker. You can certainly reach out to us at WSFS, and we can help you through looking at some of maybe the opportunities that we can give you from a financial standpoint.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions. Many of those questions have been answered by our panelists in the chat or the Q&A, but I do have a raised hand from Robin McNaughton. And Robin, I am going to allow you to talk to ask your question. Just wanted to give you a heads up before I did that. So Robin, if you were there and you wanted to ask your question, please do so now. Okay, maybe perhaps she wasn't able to, she's not listening at the moment. Wanted to just say if Marianne has a question, if there was an error made on the bank end on the amount of the loan granted, would the bank be able, would WSFS be able to make the correction on the amount provided with all of the documents?
So the application was actually borrower certified, so the bank should have not been completing the calculation on behalf of the customer. It should have been something that the bank was validating for the customer. So we had a responsibility based on the customer's calculation to substantiate the amount with payroll documents at the time of origination. Now, if for some reason, it's my understanding, if for some reason that the loan amount was deemed too large, that ultimately we could only submit for forgiveness for up to the eligible amount and with associated eligible expenses. If the loan was essentially too small comparatively to what they could have received if they calculated it accordingly to the program, then we are unable, because the program is closed and the loan is fully funded, to increase that amount. So hopefully that clarifies that question.
Thank you so much. Okay, Lawrence Miller, I'm going to allow you to talk if you want to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I'm the treasurer for a nonprofit. One of our employees voluntarily resigned during the period. And we have been unable to hire someone yet. We are looking to hire, and we're, actively doing so. How would that affect our FTE? And do I include a copy of their voluntary resignation letter in our forgiveness paperwork?
Yes. So Lawrence, you would want to include that documentation in your forgiveness paperwork. If someone voluntarily left or you had cause to let them go, you should be documenting that as it relates to your FTE count. You also should show that you're in an active effort as it relates to recruiting someone to replace that role. But that would not be something based on the SBA's guidance. You would be penalized around as long as it's for one of those purposes and you have documentation to substantiate that.
Thank you.
One addition to that, I'll add, is that if you have an employee who you've requested to return and they've turned that down, then you want to make sure that you have the documentation, the written documentation that you did ask that employee to come back and that employee turned down that application. You want to make sure that's in there as well. That way you can remove that person from the head count as well as the ones that Candace listed.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to allow Mary Lopez to ask her question now. Mary?
Yes, thank you. Candace, I want to thank you so much for all the information I've received from WSFS. However, I did submit my application already, and I received documentation stating that I needed an additional 941, which I submitted, and I thought it was okay. Now I did the easy one because I am under that 150,000, but now they're asking me to complete a Schedule A. So I guess I will have to further contact you, but I thought if you did the easy application, and they said my application is under review. If you did the easy, that you did not have to do the Schedule A as well.
That's correct. Yeah, so that you would not need to do the Schedule A if you met the qualifications for the easy. If Mary, if you want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to look into your specific circumstance and you know, see what exactly is being required, and if there's a question around the eligibility for the easy versus the full form.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
I'd like to add one other thing too into that answer to Candace's. And Mary, you stated that your loan was under 150, so you did the EZ form. The $150,000 is not one of the requirements for the EZ form. There are 3 specific requirements that you have to meet to submit the EZ, but there's no dollar limit on that right now. The $150,000 is a proposal that sits in Congress right now that states that any loans under 150 will not have to provide any documentation when they do the forgiveness, but that has not been passed. So that's still a bill that's sitting in Congress. That hasn't been approved yet.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And Mary, if you haven't yet docu-signed your final application, we would not have yet submitted it to the SBA. So if you also wanted to hold off on that submission, you can still do so. So feel free to contact me and I can help you coordinate through those steps.
Yes, I did receive the correspondence. It is from DocuSign, and they're telling me to go to the portal and submit that. But I will be calling you, Candace.
Okay, very good. Happy to help.
Christine McDevitt? Christine, did you have a question? Okay, we'll give her another second. Okay.
Hey Trish, it's Laura. I just want to point out really quickly that in the Q&A, James Wright is asking for a contact at WSFS up at the top. If one of you from WSFS, Zoe or Anthony, want to respond to him.
Great, thank you. And one of the questions we have in the Q&A that I'm sure more than one company is dealing with, if they had to let go of a full-time employee during the covered period, but after the money was exhausted due to lack of work, will that affect forgiveness?
So they're looking at, they let the one employee is no longer there after they used the PPP funds?
Correct, that's what it looks like. So they were there, used the funds, were as a full-time employee, and it looks like due to work, the individual was let go.
If it's not during the covered period and it was afterwards, then it shouldn't affect the forgiveness. We're looking at the covered period. Plus there's safe harbors that are put in place that they could look at to, you know, if they couldn't get all their employees back because of a particular reason, you know, there are safe harbors that are assisting them with the forgiveness.
There is some language too on the forgiveness form that when you submit that you had to have met those rehiring requirements or have supporting documentation to substantiate that. So that might be where that question is coming from. But I think that it would be, it ultimately is tied to the reason they left. So to Kim's point, the documenting the reason that they left, whether it be voluntary or cause. And then ultimately, if it was for something outside of your control, it should not be a consideration without supporting documentation. But if you dropped below the required rehire, there is some language you should refer to on the forgiveness application and just be mindful of. But as long as you can substantiate those causes we spoke about earlier, it should not impact your eligibility, is my understanding. And Kim, feel free to interject.
That's how I understand it too, Candace.
Yeah, and Candace, one thing we should clarify is that the 24-week period is the longest extension of the period. If you meet all the criteria within that 24 weeks, that can be your cutoff date. And you can apply from that, you can make your application from that period within the 24 weeks to get forgiveness. So if if that caller's question was, I spent all my money, I met all the criteria, and then I laid somebody off, they could stop the process before the layoff and would not have to restore that payroll.
The only thing with the interim application date is you have to, there's the FTE and then the salary restoration. If you do that at an interim point, your salary restoration will be judged at a 24-week level, not your interim date. The FTE count would be done at that date.
Yeah, I'm reading a question. I read it a few times to make sure it wasn't answered. If the loan amount is in error and too much, and the loan forgiveness is the qualified amount, what happens to the excess? Can it be returned, or is it a loan to be repaid?
So if there's a balance that's not forgiven, it would either be amortized over the eligible period, which is either 2 years or 5 years, depending on when the loan was originated and what the financial institution has chose to do, or the customer can request a payoff after forgiveness has been applied to pay off the remaining balance.
Okay. Laura, do you see any other questions that we have not answered?
I do. So Jude had ones on how to calculate FTEs, which Simpson believes at this juncture is 40 hours a week. So we gave the explanation, but I believe Shannon gave better advice, Jude, on going to treasury.gov/cares or SBA for the instructions on figuring out how to calculate the FTEs. She followed up with a question if that's how she does the 8 weeks. And Shannon replied that the 8 weeks is only if you meet the criteria for the 8 weeks as opposed to the 24, if your covered period, if you received your loan before June 5th. The only other thing that I would point out to people is that this puts the banks at somewhat of a disadvantage because they're the ones who actually lent the PPP monies. So they're the ones who are going to have to evaluate your PPP forgiveness submissions, which is why we brought SCORE in today. Because as Kim Stout from the SBA said, get those documents ready. If you're not certain 100% of what to do and you do not have an accounting firm, you can contact SCORE in order to help review those PPP submissions as well, just in case we're missing anything. And there was another one, and as an LCC sole proprietor, my initial loan app had a healthcare expense for me as a sole proprietor. I have heard mixed feedback. If my healthcare expense qualifies as a forgivable expense, can you please clarify? Bob or Candace?
It does not qualify as a forgivable expense for a sole proprietor.
His eligible compensation for forgiveness is limited to 2019 compensation at 2.5 months or $20,833 if he's doing 24 weeks.
That's it. No benefits.
And that health insurance and retirement contributions, just everybody needs to keep in mind, it goes by entity type. So whether you're an S Corp, a C Corp, an LLC, a partnership, the rules change whether or not you can include those items. So just be mindful of that when you're calculating the owner compensation eligible for forgiveness.
Right. Trish, the only other thing that seems to be popping up several times now, directly or indirectly, is employees who received both PPP funds and unemployment, or in the case of a sole proprietor, having received both unemployment and PPP funds. And I think Kim started to address that. Perhaps we should discuss that more broadly as an SP or as an entity where employees did receive unemployment and PPP.
Yeah, in my remarks, I said that if you took the PPP loan and you paid your people for the 8 weeks during that covered period, let's say you got your loan prior to June 5th, you had an 8-week cover period. They could not also collect unemployment during that time. It has to be one or the other. You can't have somebody collecting unemployment and also receiving payment from or pay from their employer.
Okay, great. There's one more question here that sounds like it was added last week. In another discussion, it was mentioned now that the cost spent can include accounting fees. If so, is it just accounting fees relative to the PPP loan or normal accounting fees? This was mentioned last week as a new item.
As an allowable cost for Paycheck Protection Program?
Yes, that's the way I'm reading this.
I'd like to see that in writing. It's
Yeah.
not, I mean, it's interest and mortgage, utilities, and, I've never seen accounting fees be allowable for Paycheck Protection Program.
Accounting fees were addressed in one of the potential upcoming legislations, and it was specifically noted as not being included in the PPP2 that's sitting in Congress right now, and the AICPA, they're lobbying to have those fees included. So there has been discussion about getting those fees included, but they're definitely not. But somebody may have read something based on that.
That's probably exactly what it was with that new legislation. You know, things start to pop up and people read things, and in the broader perspective, it's just part of the conversation that they're lobbying to have included, but at this point is not included. Before we wrap up today, I'll invite anybody else that wants to, one more, to revisit a question of another caller. If the PPP loan amount exceeds what the entity should have qualified for under the current regulations, must the borrower immediately repay the excess loan amount, or is the excess amortizable over the qualified SBA loan terms? I do believe that we answered this, but does somebody just want to real quick revisit that, because it's probably more than one person that maybe wasn't paying as strict attention as they should have to the answer.
The one thing I would add, even to what I shared earlier, is that it depends on basically how much of the funds were meeting the eligibility requirements, because there are some requirements around utilizing 60% towards payroll. So I think as long as overall you're not exceeding those requirements, the remaining balance should be able to be amortized over the remaining period, which again would either be the 2-year or the 5-year, depending on when your loan was originated. But ultimately, I would suggest, if you have that circumstance, to outreach to your specific lender, to work with them through that, bring that to their attention, and then they can work with you and the SBA on a resolution. It is something that, you know, there should be a resolution around, and transparency and documenting it correctly is going to be in everyone's interest. So certainly reach out to your lender to work through that process.
All right, thank you. We're coming up just to about an hour, so I do want to be respectful of everybody's time and remind everyone that for those that want to go back and revisit this and look for more information, we will have this up on our website on YouTube. So you can go to YouTube and search for Delco Chamber, or you can go to Bringing Back Delco or delcochamber.org, and you will find this information there. Any questions that were not answered, we will post on our blog. So you can go there to look for more specific information, and we will share the contact information for the folks that are on the call. If you need them, please reach out to us and let us know. I want to thank everybody again. These are unprecedented times. Well, we've been here about 8 months. So this is our new normal. So we'll continue to share these new ways of sharing information and getting answers to all the questions you may have as things are changing every day. Please reach out to us as a resource. We will connect you with the folks that can get you the right answers and right information. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in again and making Delco as strong as we can be. So thank you so much and have a great day.